Good morning. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Inderbarm. I'm the founder and CEO of the Food Allergy Institute. I want to welcome you to our monthly webinar that we sponsor and produce. I think today is a particularly great webinar because we have one of our tip moms who's going to be joining us and talking about her direct experience. As always, we will walk you through the entire tip program, what it's about. At the end, we'll answer any and all questions you may have. We encourage you to turn on your screens. Again, we're all part of the same community. I hope at the end of this webinar that you look at things a bit differently. You do have a choice. You have a choice to go through the condition of food anaphylaxis either with avoidance or some modification of avoidance, or you can achieve what we call food freedom, essentially remission from this state where your child or you yourself can consume foods like a non-allergic person. We are the largest global enterprise in the food allergy space now to date. So with that said, we're going to kick it off with a quick video. So once again, welcome. Really glad to have everyone join us this morning. Just a little bit about myself. My story in the food allergy space is entirely unique. As I think I often always get asked, do I have food anaphylaxis? Do my kids have food anaphylaxis? The answer is no. I actually have nobody in my immediate circle who has this condition, but I am a quintuple board certified pulmonary ICU transplant immunologist who happened upon this world of allergy and anaphylaxis. And as an immunologist, decided to build an entirely different approach to try to solve this problem. This has been 20 years in the making. My academic titles and publications speak for themselves, but ultimately this program was built with the same individuals who are on the call today. It started 20 years ago, talking to groups of moms mainly, whose kids suffered from food anaphylaxis. And we started small. We started with a few hundred individuals in Southern California, and very quickly we became the largest enterprise of its kind in the world. Currently, we are bringing in hundreds of patients every single month. We are supported by hundreds of employees across 130,000 square feet of space. We are a large enterprise. We take this condition very seriously, and this is all we do. We don't do anything else. We also make sure that we have an entire multidisciplinary approach of managing a patient's case. So the type of healthcare here that you see is entirely unique when you compare it to the rest of the healthcare system. It is one condition. It is data-centric. It's driven through machine learning and AI intelligence across the most amazing team of individuals that you've ever meet. And ultimately, that leads our patients to food freedom. So with that said, I'd like to first introduce one of our tip moms, who I happened to meet directly at an event we did in Chicago about a year and a half ago or so. And so I'd like to quickly introduce Beth Hischke, who will tell you her story.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Beth Hischke. I have a daughter who is in remission from TIP. So her anaphylactic allergens were pistachio and cashew. She was also sensitized to a number of different foods, including macadamia, peanut, hazelnut, almond, chickpea, pea, soy, chestnut, walnut, pecan, pine nut, Brazil nut, sesame, sunflower, and pumpkin. She was 15 when she started the program, and it took her about 2 years to go through it. and she hit remission back in January 2023. So she's been in remission for over 2 years now. She's the oldest of 4 children. She is our only child with food allergies. She participated in dual enrollment and AP classes throughout high school while she was in the program. She ran track in the spring, and she's also a competitive dancer throughout the treatment while she was in high school. I cannot overstate enough just how busy she was during high school, but yet we were still able to make the program work. To give you an idea of how busy she was and how serious she took her classes, when she started college this year, she went into her first year of college with over 40 credits that she achieved while in high school. So she had challenging classes, challenging schedules. Dance was 4 to 7 nights a week, depending on what time of season it was. And we were still able to make the program work. So Maddie had her first reaction when she was 4 years old. My husband grabbed cashews at the grocery store because he was going to take them to work for a snack. Maddie saw them on the counter and she said, "Can I try these half moon nuts?" And something told me she shouldn't have them. And I said to my husband, "Should she really have those?" And again, this was a long time ago. She's 19 now. She was 4. And he said, "Well, why not? She eats peanuts," which now I know much better than that peanuts are not the same as cashews, but I didn't know any different at the time. So I said, "Just give her 2." And she was chewing the second one. And immediately at 4 years old, she said, "Something's not right. Something's not right, Mom." And so thankfully, I realized what was happening and I had her spit it out. We called our pediatrician on call. It wasn't the doctor that is our pediatrician, it was someone else in the practice that was able to talk with us. But it was something that they told us to just give Benadryl and wait. And once I educated myself, I realized that was not what we really should have done. We should have taken her to the ER, but thankfully everything was fine. And eventually we got to see an allergist locally, and they told us avoid all peanuts and all tree nuts. Recommendations back then were different than they are now. So they kind of told us blanket, stay away from everything. And I am a really big rule follower, but for whatever reason, I kept challenging that allergist and I said, "But she eats peanuts fine. She eats peanut butter. Why should I stop giving it to her?" And so finally they kind of said, "Okay, I guess that's okay." But I was really glad I did, because eventually peanuts came back in her sensitive column, but she had always been having peanut butter. So hopefully, I mean, everything worked out in the end. But one of the things that when we left that allergy office, they pretty much just told us avoid all tree nuts then. And I remember going to the grocery store for that first time and I thought, I got this. How hard can this be? So I go to the grocery store and I'm reading every single label before I put it in my cart. And I'm sure you all have done the same thing. And I'm reading bread and I'm saying, "Oh my gosh, what does this mean? It says it's made in a facility with tree nuts. Does that mean I can give it to her? Does that mean I can't give it to her?" And we didn't really have a lot of guidance and advice from our allergy office at the time. They pretty much just said, "Stay away." And I remember just crying in the grocery store thinking, how am I going to do this? I thought this was going to be easy, but I was quickly realizing that was not the case. And it was very overwhelming, which I'm sure a lot of us have had the same experiences. And I really had to educate myself to figure out how to read labels, because my allergy office did not give me those insights. So I really had to start from the ground up and figure out how and what I could do to keep our family safe. So we were very strict avoidance. I said I was a rule follower, and I really am. She did not ever have any other reaction besides that very first one, but it definitely impacted our quality of life. There was only a couple family members that were close, like my sisters and my mom, that we trusted to make food for Maddie. So when we had family gatherings, we usually brought her own food, unless we were going to my family. There, she could usually have everything that was present. And in the beginning, my sisters and my mom would keep all the labels and show them to me to make sure everything was okay, because it is a lot to deal with. And if you don't do it on a day-to-day basis, it's really difficult to fully understand everything. So with that, we did do certain events, and other events we decided it wasn't worth going to. So we always kind of told Maddie that it was something that we always have a choice. You can choose to go and bring your own food and be a little different and have everyone understand that you have that food allergy, or you can choose to not go. But then you also miss out on that social time. So it's always your choice, but it's a choice that you have to make. So sometimes we would go and sometimes we wouldn't. So our school district didn't have any other child with a food allergy at the time of Maddie's diagnosis. When I brought her there for kindergarten, she was the only child in the elementary school. And this is not a small elementary school, but she was the only one with an allergy. And they had a peanut-free table at the lunch, I remember, and I was adamant. She is tree nuts. I want you to change that sign, because what I found in the beginning is everyone assumed if she had an allergy, it was peanuts. And I was like, no, she's fine with peanuts. It's tree nuts she's not okay with. And so I had them change that sign right away. I said, I understand it may be a small thing to you, but it's a really big thing to me, because I'm trying to educate her on what she can and cannot have. And that's kind of confusing for her. So I did a ton of research. I did a lot of figuring out how to keep her safe while she was in a school setting. And it was at this point, nobody in our district had a 504 plan for food allergies. But I talked to other people that I met with families with food allergies in other school districts in our area, and they did have 504 plans. So I really dug into that and tried to figure out if this was appropriate for Maddie or not. I remember the first time I went to the school district and I said, I would like a 504 plan for Maddie. And they said, we don't do that for food allergies. And I said, oh, but you can call this person and this person and this person from these other districts, and they do that for food allergies, and we can figure out how to bring it to us here. So it was so much advocating and educating from every level of the school that it was, I can't tell you the amount of time that I spent doing that, because nobody was really versed in it. Even the district nurse, I had to really sit down and explain to her what it meant for my daughter to join the school. So that was definitely a challenge. And I'm sure you guys are all aware, it was different between every level, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school. It was all things that we had to put in place. We always met before the school year. I mean, there was just so much between field trips, and, everybody knows how that is. But we were very strict with what she ate and what she didn't eat. And we made sure through her 504 plan that she would be safe at school. So fast forward to when she was in 4th grade, I learned about OIT, oral immunotherapy. I had heard about it. There was a allergist about 2 hours away from our house that was doing this. And I thought it intrigued me. Maybe we should look into it. So at this point, we were still avoiding. We would still go to our local allergist every year. They would do skin prick tests. That was kind of it. They just said, yeah, she's still allergic. Keep avoiding. So when I went to this OIT allergist, she tested more thoroughly than what we were able to back at our local allergist. So upon the results, she really believed that Maddie was only truly anaphylactic to cashews and pistachios. But we had been avoiding all the other nuts for over 10 years well, not quite at that point, but we had been avoiding them for a really long time. And so she was really the first person that listened to what it was like for us to live with food allergies and to see how it impacted our day-to-day life with our family. And once she said, I think that she's only allergic to these 2 nuts, we both agreed that OIT would not be the best route for us. We just didn't feel that the bite proof, the end result, would be worth it. She said, if you food challenge all these other nuts, and she truly is only allergic to these 2, I think that you will have a burden lifted off of you, and you will be able to kind of loosen some of those restrictions that you've held so tightly over these years. And so she said we could do it with our local allergists if they agreed. They did agree. We were able to do all the different food challenges at our local allergy office, she was indeed only allergic to cashews and pistachios. So with that, we did feel that we kind of opened up her restaurants, which she had never eaten at a restaurant before this. And so as long as we knew that there was no cashews or pistachios at that restaurant, we allowed her to eat. We still called ahead, we still talked to them, we still had our EpiPen, we still checked labels, we were still very careful. But a little bit of an open door happened at that point. The other thing that was really hard for Maddie was her environmental allergies. She was miserable fall, summer, spring. Anytime she was outside or even inside, she was on daily antihistamines. She was on inhalers. She was on antihistamine eye drops, and she was still miserable. She would go outside to play and she would immediately need to come inside with her inhaler. So it was something that really bothered her. And this allergist kind of steered us into allergy shots. We ended up doing allergy shots locally, and it was the best thing that we did for her up until this point. Once her environmental allergens got under control, her asthma was like gone. She hardly used her inhaler. She was able to get off all of the antihistamines, and it was amazing. She saw such a relief from it that it was well worth the time that we invested into it. She was almost done with allergy shots by the time we ended up starting with TIP. She only had a couple left per month, but we ended up stopping that to start with TIP. So that was something that we talked with the clinic about, and we talked with her local allergist about, and that's where we all ended up. So discovering TIP. I first heard about TIP years before that we actually started it. I dismissed it. It seemed amazing. It seemed too good to be true. I thought, well, people like me don't really do this, right? I mean, we live in Wisconsin. We're a middle-class family. Nothing super special about it. I just thought, this isn't for people like us. I'm not sure who it's for, but probably not us. I can't see traveling halfway across the country for a program. It just didn't seem realistic to me. So I run a local food allergy support group on Facebook that I started way long ago when Facebook kind of first came into the scene. And in one of the posts, a mom talked about going to California for TIP to treat her daughter's cashew and pistachio allergies, the exact same that Maddie had. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I have a couple questions. I've heard of this. It's been intriguing to me, but I just don't think it's real, right? And she was amazing. She FaceTimed with Maddie and myself, and she allowed us to ask her any questions that we had. Her daughter was younger than Maddie, so she was not on the phone call with us, but it was so helpful for us to really see that it's possible and that someone else just like us is doing it. And so I think that that really made all the difference in me truly understanding that this could be a viable option for us. And I like to do my research. So I watched every YouTube video that Dr. Rendawa had ever had. At the time, I clicked on every link on their website and followed all of it to learn everything I could learn about what this program really entails. And I just try to get my hands on everything. And this was probably 2020. The pandemic had already happened. And Dr. Rendawa at the time was doing these monthly videos. I think it was monthly, but I would watch every single one of them. And it wasn't even food allergy related, but there was so much misinformation out there about what was happening in the pandemic. And I felt like every month I could listen to him and he would break it down where I could understand what I should be concerned about and what I shouldn't be. And that really started building my trust because I saw him once a month, and it was in a time that everybody was, I don't want to say scared, but everybody was a little uncertain about what was happening. So after all of that, and I just realized that it might be too good to be true, but maybe there was something to this. And so after talking to this other parent and kind of learning all I could on my own, we decided that we were going to go ahead and pursue TIP. So travel. This was one of my big sticky points because we were traveling from Wisconsin. How is this possible that we fly all the way to California for this treatment? So up until we started TIP, Maddie and I together had only flown one time. The year before that, there was a teen allergy conference in Washington, D.C. that I flew her to. It was a conference for teenagers so that they could meet their peers and learn new things. And it was wonderful. But that was the only time she had flown. So the very first time we went out to California was the second time she had flown. And I would always wipe down the seats and the trays. And I can tell you that I will always do that because they're pretty dirty when you wipe them down. So it was something that I will take with me and we will always do. It's just what we do now. But I also always brought her her own food for in the airport, for on the plane, for during our travels, because like most parents of kids with food allergies, it's scary to be on an airplane with a child who has a food allergy. So the only food that she would eat on the plane was food that I gave her and that we knew was 100% safe for her. The other piece is the cost of the travel, right? So there are different Facebook groups for TIP families that really helped me try to wrap my brain around how this was going to work. One of them is the Travel Tipsters. And so within that group, I learned about the Southwest Airlines Companion Pass. I had never heard of it before. So I did research again, tried to figure out, is this the right fit for us? And if it is, how do I do this? So I learned how to earn the companion pass through Southwest. And after that very first time that we flew out to California, that was the only time we paid for our flights. Every other time we've been out to California, I fly on my points and Maddie flies free with me. The only thing I pay for is her taxes, which taxes are $5.60 each way for your companion. So that's one of the ways that we were able to make this program work for us is that I don't have to pay for the flights. Yes, you're still using points and things like that. It's not totally free, but it was way easier for us than always having cash to pay for the flights. The other thing I do all the time is when I book with my points, I often check the flights on Southwest website to see if the price drops, because if it does, you can change your flight to the same flight you were already planning on taking, and they give you back the point difference in points. So for example, just yesterday, I check every once in a while, I checked, we're flying out in May in a couple weeks here for her remission visit. I looked and one way of our flight just went down 3,500 points. So I rebooked it yesterday and I got those points back. So you learn things along the way to make it easier and more cost effective. The other thing that we always did was we had quick turnaround trips. Would this work with a smaller child? I surely wouldn't have done it when my kids were little, but with an older child, it worked out great. In the beginning of treatment, we had 2 days of appointments. And this was also in 2021 when the flights were more reliable and there wasn't as many delays and there wasn't as many people traveling. So back in that time, she would have 2 days of appointments. We would leave Milwaukee at like 5 in the morning. We would get to California around 9:30 or 10 o'clock California time. Her appointment would be later in the day at like 4. And it would allow us a little bit of time to kind of do something fun in the meantime. And then we'd have her appointment. We'd go to the hotel and pretty much crash because we had been up since like 2 in the morning. And then the next morning we would have her next appointment, like first thing in the morning, usually like 8, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then we would fly home at 4:30 that night and we'd get home at like 1 in the morning. It was a lot. It was exhausting, but it allowed us to only pay for 1 night of a hotel and only have a car rental for those 2 days. So we did it that way to save some money. And again, with a younger child, it wouldn't be that easy to do that. But with a teenager, she had no problem staying up and doing all those things. Once we moved to 1 day appointments, as we moved on in our treatment and only had 1 day of appointments, I still traveled the day before. And then we would have all day what we called to play. We would plan something. We would, sometimes we did like a whale watching trip. Sometimes we rented bikes and biked along the strand, along the ocean. So we did fun things, and they weren't always things that cost money. Sometimes we just went to Steel Beach and walked around the town there and just got to see something different than what we're used to. So we did try to plan something in conjunction with going there also for her medical visits. And they became very special memories for us. And it's funny, with teenagers, they're pretty busy. I would often joke that I saw Maddie more in the time that we would travel to California, be in California, and come home than I would see her in an entire month when we were at home, because she was with me all the time when we were traveling. And those were really special times for us. And it was something that we both really actually kind of miss going there, not as often anymore. So the at-home dosing while in the program. I am a very organized person, and it was essential for us to be successful in the program. I made a spreadsheet in a calendar form that would track her slit, her maintenance food, her recommended food, and her treatment dosing. When I would come back from her appointment, they give you a discharge summary when you leave. And that was like my Bible. I would reference that multiple times whenever I needed to. It was always where I could get it. I would come home, sit at the computer, make the calendar so that I knew from now until the next time we flew out there, I knew exactly what needed to happen every day, so that during those busy days that we had, I didn't have to think about what she needed to eat. I could just reference the calendar and automatically know this is what you have to eat this day. So that made it much easier for us. The planning ahead is huge. It depends where she was in the program. If she was still on gummies, which is going to be a little different now, but versus if she was on doses that we had to chop everything and then measure out for her. So it was just something that you kind of get in the habit and you just make a routine with it. And yes, it takes time, but it wasn't hard. It was just things that took time that we would have to set aside to do. We often rotated her foods so that she wasn't always eating the same thing. And again, with her being older, we had those conversations where I would say, what do you want us to mix this in this week? What should I get at the grocery store? I would try to involve her as much as I could because she was the one that had to eat it. And we would try to use easy things as often as possible. With the younger kids, I know people will make waffles and pancakes and try to hide things in chocolate. And before Maddie and I started the program, we kind of agreed, we're going to try to do this as easy as we can because we are all busy and you're old enough to understand why you're eating these foods. I'm not going to try to hide them. There were certain foods she didn't like the taste of, she didn't like the texture of. We did try to hide those a little bit more. And it got to the point where she had a maintenance muffin for breakfast, which had almost all of her nuts in the muffin. She would help me make it. And then we also had other things that she would have to mix into yogurt because it didn't all fit in the muffin. But we tried to make it as easy as possible. We often joke that she'll probably never look at unsweetened applesauce the same again because she used it a lot in treatment. And I don't think she's eaten applesauce since, but that's a small price to pay. She does still eat yogurt with her maintenance doses that she still does. She does eat most of them in her yogurt, and that's been fine. But we always kept a routine and a schedule, and we knew that this was our priority. And every day we would figure out when she's going to do her maintenance foods. The slit was in the morning, the maintenance food was in the morning. It was the treatment doses that we really had to try to work into her schedule because she was so busy after school that we would have to make sure every day we knew when she was going to take that and when she would be able to have that rest period afterwards. So it definitely was a challenge, but something that we were able to make happen. So milestones. I never lie to people. And I say, there are ups and downs in the program. There are days when you feel like you can't do this anymore. And just because of the time, of the cost, of the stress sometimes of knowing that your daughter is eating the foods that they're allergic to, that's real. And so we would try to celebrate those little wins that we would get along the way. For example, it was over 10 years that we avoided these nuts, and I didn't have any nuts in the house. My other three kids, they didn't have nuts either. So once we had to start doing our own dosing and chopping the nuts, I went to Trader Joe's. I had a basket and it was full of nuts. I took a picture and sent it to my husband and said, I'm bringing these home. Get ready. Because it was something that I never thought would happen. You work so hard to keep your child safe for so long, and then all of a sudden you slowly start allowing these things in your home, and that is hard sometimes. And so when she was dosing and chopped up, it was easy to kind of just pretend that it wasn't really the nut. But once she progressed a whole cashew or a whole pistachio, there were plenty of times I remember her sitting at the kitchen table, eating her treatment dose, and both of us just looking at each other saying, I can't believe you're eating a cashew. I can't believe it. So those are things that we would kind of take a moment and say, you've come really far. This is pretty amazing. And our family loves to travel. We travel whenever we can, but I always chose our destinations with Maddie's food allergies in mind. I needed to make sure we were close enough to a hospital. I needed to make sure that the medical facility that they had there would be able to accommodate her and that there wouldn't be a language barrier so that they knew what was happening. So while she was in TIP, we went on a very short cruise and it was amazing. We never would have thought that we would ever go on a cruise. And we actually went on another cruise after she was done with the program too. And even when she was in the program, she still had, restrictions. She couldn't just eat anything she wanted there, but it was still well worth it. And I never would have even attempted that had it not been for her going through TIP. The other minor but very exciting win that sticks out in our head is when she could eat the Southwest snack mix. How many times did we fly back and forth that she would politely decline it, or she would take it and give it to me and I'd put it in my backpack to, give to my other kids when we got home and they could take it in their lunch. And when she finally could have that snack mix, you would have thought that she was eating chocolate. I mean, she was so excited to try it. And now they don't even have the snack mix anymore. But at the time, it was something that was really important. And the last thing I want to talk about with her milestones is this photo. She was in remission. We were in Costa Rica. We had wanted to go to Costa Rica for so long, but I just didn't feel comfortable taking her to Costa Rica. So we all went as a family of 6 and we had breakfast in the hotel in the morning. And whatever she's holding, I don't know what it is. It's a fruit. I'm not sure. But we all ate it and it was really good. And she was going to eat it and she could. We didn't ask what it was. I didn't talk to the chef. I don't even know what it was. She ate it and I still don't know what it is. And it was just really funny because she also was wearing her food allergy t-shirt. And so I said, Maddie, you have to stop. I have to take a picture of this because we don't even know what you're holding and you're going to eat it. And if it wasn't for what's on your t-shirt, we would not be doing this. So that is just one of the many important milestones that we have had because of the TIP program. Food freedom. I get this question all the time from potential families that I talk with over the phone, and they want to know, what does that really mean? Well, I can tell you, Maddie is a freshman in college this year. She has 2 more weeks until we bring her home for the year. She is over 3 hours away from home, and she has been fine navigating her first year of college. She has never checked a label. The university doesn't even know she has a food allergy. We do not have any accommodations for her living in the dorms. She lives in the dorms. She has eaten at all of the dining options available on campus, and nobody has any idea that work there that she has a food allergy. It has truly been one of the big reasons that we wanted to do this program. I could not think about how we would make it work for her to go away to school if that's what she chose to do, and the worry and the planning. And yes, we would have made it work somehow, but it would have been very difficult. And I think we are so lucky this year that it has gone so smoothly and it has not been an issue. She will come home for her breaks. We will make all of her maintenance food for the next chunk of time that she's going to be away back at school until she comes home again. And the amount of food is so small now that it's so manageable. So we'll make all of her dosing and I put them in, we label them and we do all of it together. And it fits in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. And she takes that for 6 weeks, for 7 weeks. And other than that, she just has to make sure she takes it. And it has been such a blessing. She is majoring in biology with a minor in Spanish and dance. She wants to become a physician assistant and be able to speak Spanish in a hospital setting, which means she has to have a medical certificate. So this is something that she has wanted to do for a very long time. She wants to study abroad in a Spanish-speaking country, doing medical things. And again, I would never want to say no, but it would just be so much work in order for her to be able to do that and to follow those dreams. And now she'll be able to do that, whether it's, over a winter term in a couple years where she can go into a Spanish-speaking country, work on her Spanish and work on her medical knowledge. And that's something that we don't take for granted. Trust me, there's been a lot of things I've worried about this first year that she's been away. She's my oldest. She's my first one to leave the nest. But the food allergies hasn't been one of those things that I've worried about. Everything's not roses and unicorns. I do still text her and say, hey, how's it going with your maintenance foods? Can you show me some empty bags, some empty containers? Are you still doing that? Because I don't have control anymore. I don't know if she's doing what she's supposed to be doing. I have to believe and trust that what we've been doing these last couple of years is what is going to motivate her to continue doing what she needs to do. So it is something that she has done great with this year. And it's truly been food freedom where nobody in school. I mean, obviously her roommate knows because she's got a bin of nuts that she has to eat. But other than that, it's really been a great experience. So this is major. This is a major milestone. I said Maddie danced all through high school. She tried out her senior year of high school for her school's dance team. She made it. She's been on the dance team all year. They had little competitions throughout the state throughout this past year, and it ends with a huge national trip. So we're in Wisconsin. She goes to school in Wisconsin. She flew with the team to NDA Nationals in Daytona Beach, Florida in April, traveled with the team, stayed with the team. Everything was done with the team. I did travel down there so I could watch the competition, but I didn't even stay in the same hotel as her. She fully participated in everything that they had to offer. She had team meals. She was in practices. They would order DoorDash so that they could eat in between practicing and competitions. And she was able to stay with her teammates the whole time. And she was able to eat and be the same as all of her teammates. And when you have avoided allergies for so long and every trip, anything you do, you make sure that you have your own food. This was so freeing for both of us. If this would have been pre-tip, I would have stayed in a house that had a full kitchen. I would have bought food, prepared food, delivered food for her, and we would have had to make that work. Could we have still done that? Yes, but we didn't have to. And so it was just for both of us leading up to the trip and during the trip to realize how different this would have been if it was pre-tip, because there was no separating of food or anything. She was just like all of her peers. And don't get me wrong, I had a rental car. I still went to the grocery store. I still bought snacks. I still bought fruits and veggies to drop off for all of the girls. But that was what everybody was having. It had nothing to do with that she had a food allergy. It was just something nice that I could do because I had a rental car and they didn't have access to that. So it was really, really a memorable moment for both of us to see how far she has come because of Tip.
Well, I look at the advocacy, the courage, the willpower of Beth's story and Maddies' story, and I'm sure it rings true with many of you on the call. So I want to thank Beth for walking us through that amazing journey. And that's what food freedom is. I mean, it's right there. That's that story is what's relatable to the tens of thousands of patients who are in our system, the 9,000 plus patients who are in remission. Again, this is what we do every single day. So I'll take a few minutes here to talk through submitted questions that were sent in earlier. We'll answer these, which will hopefully answer them for most of everyone on the call, and then we can take some targeted questions from those on the webinar directly. So how is FAI, Food Allergy Institute, different than a traditional system that you see? If you were to come here, you're looking at about 130,000 square feet of space. Let me put it in some more strategic numbers. In any given month here, we're conducting close to 3,000 food challenges, and our food challenges are done in a very different way. We are conducting large food challenges. These are large amounts of protein. You can often see them in the forms of cups. We are then putting them through an immune system challenge, which includes exercise testing and things of this nature. You know, academic hospitals around the country, they may conduct 5 to 10 a month. If you go to, you know, a typical allergist office, it's somewhere around that number. So clearly there's a scale factor that's occurring here that makes us very different. We're also an institute. We have every type of laboratory possible: diagnostic laboratory, a food laboratory, meaning a food science laboratory, our applied math and artificial intelligence laboratory, and much, much more. So all of the work that's being done here on a daily basis is that of a much larger scale organization than a typical traditional allergist office. And I just say one last point, and that is the work we do here is data centric, and we do everything through data science, everything from 24/7 monitoring of patients to making sure that your forecasted treatment plan is organized and running on track. That is what we do every day. That amount of support is not available in a typical traditional allergist office, and that's a very clear differentiator as is. Another question is, why can TIP handle severe and complex cases when other systems say that can't be done? That largely comes from how I built the organization. Again, I have multiple board certifications. I treat the most complicated spaces. Nonprofits that I built focus on rare disease. So complex disease is not something that we shy away from. We are absolutely ready to take them on. And in fact, I'd say 2/3 at any given time, 2/3 or more of our cases are highly complex. I think, you know, Maddie has very much a more typical food anaphylaxis case. Majority of our cases are much, much more complex. They have severe asthma, severe atopic dermatitis or eczema. They have gut health issues, EOE, inflammatory bowel disease, you name it. Not to mention many other medical conditions that can coexist or be unrelated to food anaphylaxis. How we manage these cases, again, is through data science, processes, and high levels of organization. We are a multidisciplinary organization. We work with multiple specialists of all different kinds across the country and around the world. So we will quarterback your child's case as you go through the program, full stop. How often do treatment setbacks occur and reactions? The short answer is it is uncommon. It is rare. And it's also listed on our website. We actually have real-time data of what reactions are occurring when. And that level of transparency is something that we don't have to do, but we want to do. We want everyone to see how we are operating, what we're trying to achieve, what is our level of success, and how we ultimately are getting better and better as years go by with our approach using a lot of AI technology. Less than 1% of our patients will have a recurrent set of symptoms. And for that, and really for all of our patients, we have 24/7 on-call digital and in-person support. We take those cases that are having recurrent symptoms and we escalate them very quickly. It doesn't take us more than typically 6 to 24 hours to get a patient's data set remodeled, reforecasted, rebuilt, and moving right back on track. That is, again, how serious we are about what we're doing. We do not want to waste time. Every parent is here trying to get their child to the finish line, and so are we. We're trying to do this as quickly, yet as safely as possible. And as far as what food allergy remission means, I want to be very clear about this. We're the only organization, and the only organization at all who is even discussing the concept of remission. OIT is still a form of avoidance. Xolair is still a form of avoidance. The patch that's coming up, the DBV patch type technologies, they are still forms of avoidance. The end goal of this program is not avoidance. The end goal of this program is full consumption of the foods that you're once anaphylactic to as much as you want without restriction on an irregular or regular basis. You eat like a non-allergic individual. That is something that I'd say the vast majority of our patients actually elect to do and actually change their lifestyle accordingly, which is really just an amazing thing. Remission, by scientific definition, means that we're able to take a patient who was once anaphylactic to a variety of foods, and we will allow that individual to maintain remission, or what we call sustained unresponsiveness, every 7, 14, 21, or 30 days. Those cycles are all forecasted and predicted based on immunological data, and then that means the patient for the rest of the time is consuming those foods, none at all, or as much as they want. Again, we encourage them to consume like a non-allergic person. Are reactions in remission possible? Yes, they are even more rare than the low 1% that is in during treatment. If you look at us currently, we have about 2.5 patients hitting remission per day right now. That's about the rate that's going. And if you look at patients who are finishing the program, the greatest chance of reactivity is usually within the first 6 months of remission, because we're taking the immune system now to this lower frequency of foods. It's occurring in about 1 in 100 and 150 type patients. It's really month-to-month based data, but it's somewhere around that range. The symptoms that are there are often very mild, and so we're able to kind of manage them and have to make the appropriate adjustments to get them right back on track. Those patients ultimately get right back to remission as well, and we're able to take them forward as we do with every other case. We have some submitted questions here for Beth. Maybe I'll read the question. Beth, you want to take a shot at it?
Sure.
What is maintenance and remission like, and how easy is it to incorporate it into everyday life?
So I did talk about this a little bit already, but I will touch a little more details. So Maddie, right now, in the part of remission where she's at, she has 3 foods that she has to eat once a week. She has 9 other foods that she eats once every other week. And that's it. It is super easy for her to work that into what she needs to do on a day-to-day basis. Even in college, she is still practicing dance 4 nights a week for her dance team that she is. And it's not an issue. We do prep everything when she comes home, like I said, and then she'll take it for the next stretch of time that she'll be at school. So she doesn't have to prep it in the dorms. Next year, she'll be in an apartment, and I don't know if she'll still prep at home in between her breaks or if she'll take it all and she'll just do all of it at her apartment. That'll be something we discuss this summer.
Great. I know you answered maybe a number of these questions earlier, but maybe I'll just kind of add to this question. But if you consider starting treatment as an older individual, meaning a teenager versus younger, I know you talked about it being somewhat difficult to travel with a much younger child, but if you could have done it sooner, would you have, and why or why not?
So I get this question a lot when I talk with families, and there's definitely pros and cons to each. And I have touched on some of these, but I would say the biggest challenge to having a teenager in the program is that they are very busy. They are not home as much. You don't have as much control over their time as you do a younger child. And I talked about how busy she was, but we would seriously mark in the calendar from this time to this time, you're home and you're doing your treatment foods every day. because that's what it took in order for us to know and feel confident that we would have that time set aside for her to do it. I think that's the biggest challenge to having a teenager in the program. It's also challenging with the travel, having a teenager, because it's harder for them to miss school. I've touched upon the difficult classes Maddie took in high school. It's not easy for her to miss 2 days of classes and to set herself 2 days behind in school. Her teachers were always wonderful. They always did whatever they could to help support us, but the stress still fell on her to make everything up. With a younger child, it's a lot easier for them to miss school. So I do think that that's something that is a big difference between an older child and a younger child. But the one thing that I think is so important about having a teenager is that they have to have the buy-in. And I think this also goes to the next question too. But we had many discussions, Maddie and I and my husband, before we started treatment, so that she understood as well as she could what she was in for. You never know exactly what it's going to be like until you're in it, but I think that was really helpful for her. And I think the other flip side to having a younger child in the program is that sometimes it's hard to get kids to eat whatever foods you want, let alone foods that they have to eat every day. So that's a challenge I think some people have with younger kids in the program. But I also think that we would not have been able to start the treatment sooner financially. I don't see how we would have been able to do it. Would we have if we could? Absolutely. There is so much things that Maddie missed out on growing up because of her food allergy. All the birthday parties she wasn't invited to because the parents didn't want to deal with having to worry about her food allergies. Although I always said, I will bring food, you don't have to worry about it. They just didn't want to deal with it. So there was a lot of friendships that she had that went away because it was just too much for families. And so if I could go back and give her tip before she had to go through all of that, and we had to go through all of that, 100% I would. But I also think that the because she was older, we had a different experience. So I don't think one is better than the other. I think it's just different. Just like when I was younger and our kids were young and we were so busy, and I remember thinking, I just want them to be a little older. It would be so much easier. Well, now they are all older and it's not really easier. It's just different. And I think that's the same thing with whether you start TIP with young kids or you start them with old kids. One isn't better or worse. It's just different things that you are dealing with in trying to help them through the program. But yes, if I could take away all the time and energy that I advocated and educated everybody in her life, that would be worth it alone. But it also made our relationship the way it is today, and it made me who I am today too. So I don't think there's a perfect age, but yes, in her circumstance, I would have started it earlier if I could, for sure. And then this other question I kind of already started with about advice for tips and for a tip going with a teenager going through tip. And I do get this question often as well. And I mentioned it before, but we had a lot of conversations about what she was committing to, because I remember saying to her, I can't want this more than you want it for yourself. I can help you, I can guide you, but in the end, it's really up to you. You are the one that has to eat all this stuff, not me. So I will do whatever I can to make it easier, but in the end, I need you to buy into this and I need you to want to do it, because there will be highs and lows during treatment. And in the end, we have to keep reminding each other that we are in this for the long haul. We are in this for food freedom at the end. And I also would tell families that they have to prioritize the treatment program. I know that it's hard with teenagers. I know what that's like. I've done it. But there will be times that they will miss something. They won't be able to go because they have to stay home and do their treatment food, or they have to stay home and have their rest period. There was times that she left track early in order to come home, do her treatment food, and then she would have her rest period, and then she would go to dance. She may get to dance late. I may allow her to go to dance and sit for the remainder plus a little extra of her rest period. But it's what worked for us. And everybody in her life knew we were doing this, and everybody was supportive of it. And it was something that just, it was a non-negotiable. And I would encourage any parent to kind of have that with their child, because it's really them that has to do it. And I also would get them involved in the prepping of food, and because eventually they will have to take it on themselves. This isn't something that just stops at remission. It is way easier in remission to maintain remission, but there are still things that we have to do to keep her in the state that she wants to be in, which is remission. So those are kind of the things that I would say are super important for a teenager. And the last thing, which I did touch on too, is that we made these visits more than just an appointment. We tried to do something fun together and keep that time together that we could do whatever we wanted in California, even if it was only for 2 hours. It was still not just a medical appointment that we were going there for. And I think that really helped change our mindset to know that I'm not traveling all this way just for this program, although it is still kind of worth it just to do that. But it just made it a little easier to kind of understand the cost of what we were doing every time we traveled. Kind of long-winded, but that was the answer to the 2 questions.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, thank you very much, Beth. We're gonna go on to our Q&A because we have about 30 minutes left. And so again, we'll ask you to raise your hand. I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute when I get there. And I will say that please let us know where you're from, and go ahead and let us know who you're asking the question to, either myself or Beth. So we'll start off with Michael, who's been raising his hand here for a bit. Go ahead, Michael, you can unmute your.
All right. Yeah, thank you, guys. That couldn't have been more helpful. Very, very, very helpful. We're down in Florida, and we're probably about as far away from you guys as we could possibly be. And we have the whole gamut here. We got 4 anaphylactic allergies. We got asthma. We got seasonal allergies. We got atopic dermatitis. And we're trying to really plan our lives around TIP, as ironic as that might sound, because we know that will give us the freedom back here. So it's a little unrealistic for us for a multitude of reasons to make the commitment to get to California. But one of the members on the mom group said that she had heard about maybe a clinic coming available in Tennessee or Nashville or somewhere more Midwest or East Coast. Is that something that we could maybe count on for the 2026 year, or is that not something we should maybe plan around?
That's a fair question. Look, expanding what we do has always been an aim of mine. And, we started that expansion a few years back in 2022 here on the West Coast. That has been successful. And, look, we have to do this right, and we have to do this safely. That's the most important thing. We don't have the ability to just kind of open up shop somewhere and suddenly hire people, train them on our AI machine learning systems, and expect it to work. It does take time to do this right. And whatever we do not want to expand and have any less level of success or any higher level of side effects. We want it to be the same as we have here or better. That's our fundamental goal. So, we are looking at expansion here this year, again, mainly on the West Coast. We are looking to expand across the country through a different affiliate type model. These would be much smaller, let's call it smaller offices that we will work with other physicians. However, the system is still ours. These are still our employees. This is still our AI tech. Everything else is relatively the same, but at a much smaller scale. That's something that we have not been able to declare a clear timeline on, but again, it's something that I will say we're looking very seriously at. So I appreciate the question. I can't tell you, and I will not. I think I always tell people the only thing worse than hope is false hope. So I don't want to give you false hope and say it's going to happen in 26, but I'll tell you that we're very serious about getting the expansion moving across the U.S. here soon.
Do you feel like there's maybe somewhere, even with the OIT or something like that, is there somewhere that we could drive to, even if it's a day's drive, that's somewhere on the East Coast or the Midwest that we could maybe just get started with as we kind of navigate to see if there's something that you guys come up with. We just have a couple family restrictions for other medical reasons around flying. And that's
Sure.
really our only challenge at the moment. So we're having to drive. And if there's somewhere that that we could maybe start to get affiliated with or have them do some allergy testing, we'll make the drive. But I don't want to kind of hitch our horse to the wrong wagon and just choose a random place. If you're familiar with somewhere where, we might look into.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to have our team kind of maybe send you some kind of locations or individuals offline. But what I tell folks is this: OIT, or kind of the general allergy approach, when you have other comorbidities like asthma, eczema, or other things, it becomes very difficult. If you look at the data on OIT amongst complicated cases, you'll actually not find much because they automatically exclude patients, from those types of diagnoses. I will say that the best thing you could probably do is get a very firm diagnosis of what you are allergic to and what you're hopefully not allergic to. I think that's important, and that can at least open up some nutritional, aspects and certainly some safety. Those places tend to be more kind of big university systems. You just got to get in, get in line and try and get some of those tests done and potentially some food challenges. That's not a bad way to go, at least while you're trying to get things stabilized. And then, of course, get the other things like the asthma and the eczema under better control as well. That at least provides you some guidance on that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And like I said, we're very hopeful. I think your program is kind of the holy grail for us for a multitude of reasons. I feel like as long as we can, aside from moving to California or moving closer, as long as we know maybe in the next couple of years or next year or so, it at least gives us some hope to know that, we might have a nice option here.
You got it. Best of luck to you. Thank you for the question. Next is Paulina. You can go to unmute.
Hi, yes. So I just have a question. I hope this makes sense. So my son has eczema, and I was kind of researching that it's linked to leaky gut. And with that, like they kind of do elimination diets because you want to avoid like the food that's causing it. So I'm assuming maybe like his allergens. Do you know anything of that correlation between that and then also it kind of seems like contradicting with the TIP program on giving him his allergens to help with his eczema. I just want to know if you have any like information, or does that kind of make sense what I said?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I think if I heard you correctly, your son has eczema, and the recommendation is to go on an elimination diet, meaning you eliminate large numbers of foods to hopefully improve their skin. That is something that still is widely done in general practices. Dermatologists and allergists do sometimes make that recommendation. That is done with a level of risk and benefit, right? So if you eliminate certain foods, it's quite possible that you will see an improvement in the skin. The problem is if the body is already harboring a response to that food and now you've removed it, it quite potentially could fix the response now towards anaphylaxis, meaning you can actually now develop a much more severe food allergy to that food, even though the eczema might get a little bit better or modestly better with an elimination diet. Here in TIP, this is not OIT. We're not doing anything blindly. We have biosimilar proteins that have been studied, developed for 20 years now. That's been my heavy work in this space, where we utilize all these biosimilar proteins as we go through the program in a forecasted way. And really, in simple terms, we do not turn the immune system up, we're turning it down. We do not aggravate the immune system, we're down regulating the immune system. As we do that, our patients will see not only their numbers go down, so their immunological values improve, we will set them up to see their primary allergens drop before we ever give them that food. So whether it's peanut or milk or any other primary allergen, our job is to reduce those values across the entire immunological spectrum before we ever give them that food. And then therefore, when we actually give them that food in a forecasted way, A, it's done rapidly, B, it's done to remission, and C, it's done to avoid any aggravation of the immune system or immune-based conditions such as eczema or asthma. And essentially that's what happens for our patients. We're able to start the program with all these conditions. They end the program, they're in remission, they have food freedom, they don't have eczema. Often it's controlled by 90 to 95%. Their asthma is often very well controlled as well. And that's the model that we have.
Gotcha. How does how, like, I don't know if you can describe it scientifically, or how does it help with clearing up their skin? Because I know, like you kind of say, it kind of flares up a little bit and it goes back down throughout the program, but how, like, what's going on in the body when you're giving the allergens to help clear up the eczema at the end of the program? Because my concern is like not wanting to give him so much medication for his eczema, or needing to have so much medication in his system to control his eczema throughout the program.
Yeah, the relationship between the immune cells in the body is very complex, but it's also very connected. So the skin cells that trigger ultimately what you see as eczema, many of those specific skin cells, these are called dendritic cells and ILC cells. These cells will communicate to the rest of the body, including the GI tract. So the relationship between the gut and the skin is relatively connected. The relationship between the gut and the lungs is also similarly connected. So as we downregulate very specific, proteins within the GI tract, that same response is seen inside the skin. One of the tests that we do that I'd say almost nobody else does is we will actually run a dendritic cell test through patch testing on every single patient. That's a very useful test. It gives us some very clean data to look at the connectivity between these specific cells and what's going on in the GI tract.
Okay. And as far as like medication, is it possible to go through the program without needing so much medication to control his eczema?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the majority of our patients who come in are not on a lot of medication. A lot of it does come down to how severe the eczema is at the start of the program. If we're able to get it under control as we are starting TIP, it does work much, much better. But that's something that we have a lot of experience with and a lot of specialists who can support.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Andreas.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much. I'm from Germany, so we are expecting, if we join, a lot of cost coming from the traveling part. So to have a kind of idea how long it will take to get through remission for our son. I mean, he's anaphylactic to tree nuts, and I'm pretty sure we had a pretty good diagnostic over here. But how common is it that people that come over to your clinic with all the intense blood work and stuff you do, that come over with like just tree nuts, end up with like several more things to be treated because you find out several more things that may be anaphylactic or?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have we treated around 1,400 patients now internationally who are in the program. The number grows every month. We've had a lot of patients from Germany as well. Generally, the individuals who are flying here from other countries are coming in about every 10 to 12 weeks. So it's about every 3 months. And in those 3 months, we are usually running multiple foods simultaneously. And we do that for every patient, no matter where they're coming from. As far as tree nut only versus add-on allergens, right now, about 1 in 5 patients is going to come in and have a absolutely new anaphylactic protein. Usually it's like fish or shellfish, something like that they may have not eaten. But it's about 1 in 5. So it's not like we're suddenly telling people, there's a lot of new allergens that are, on the list. But it does happen. But I'd say more importantly, we are able to recognize what foods they don't have to worry about. That's also very important, right? So we can clear those out relatively quickly. But clearing out foods and just doing food challenges is not necessarily the right thing to do at the right time. What I mean by that is, remember, these are all biosimilar proteins. They have relationships. So if you do outright challenges early, you might have the benefit of actually turning down that response, but you might actually have the negative impact of upregulating another response. And this is the problem, right? So when you do it in a very organized, data-centric way, we can predict those things and get them done very quickly. So again, if it's just tree nuts, most of the patients are done in as you saw with the story earlier, a few years, about 2 years.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Felicia. You can go ahead and unmute Felicia.
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I may have missed it, but I'm still trying to understand the whole how the process works. You mentioned about multidisciplinary approach, and then I heard about machine learning, and then a protein that's customized to you. What exactly is happening here? I'm trying to understand the whole process, and is it you know I heard the lady talking about her daughter eating food, and then there's needles involved. Like, what is the whole process? I did go on your website, but I still don't understand how it's actually, what exactly is happening in this TIP treatment. Our son has multiple food allergies, anaphylactic to a few, and we went through the whole OIT treatment for years, and then once in college, he dropped it. So it's caused a lot of pain, and but I'm just trying to understand how this TIP process even work. We are in North Cal. I don't know if you're in office there yet, but he is studying in SoCal.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you the short version of that. Again, I encourage you to check out our website. Yeah, TIP is nothing like OIT. You went through OIT, and I'll just walk you through TIP briefly. You come in, you undergo initial diagnostic assays. So that includes blood work, skin testing, and patch testing. We get about 400 plus data points. 400 plus data points are entered into our AI machine learning system. That system is built upon petabytes of data that have been built up over 20 years here across anaphylactic individuals. And what that will do is look at the immune landscape of all of these individuals, the biological proteins that we have sequenced and built into databases, and they'll take those 400 plus data points and produce a risk assessment. So essentially you get a snapshot. It'll tell you what your son is anaphylactic to, sensitized to, and fully tolerant to. We then take that data, that snapshot, and then design a forecast plan, again through machine learning and AI, that will utilize biosimilar proteins to downregulate and modify the immune system. You went through OIT. OIT starts with whatever food. They use dilutions. They use like whatever, some sort of a liquid process. And they'll start with dilutions. You go in every week and you do these drops and you build up slowly to get to, 1 or 2 peanuts. And that's where you're supposed to stay every single day indefinitely. Here, the forecasting is done. You don't come in every week. We actually see you every 8 weeks or so. And in those 8 weeks, you're doing your buildup at home. We give you those proteins. They're built from our manufacturing facility. They come in little gummies, and you consume those. And then when you come back, we do these full challenges to clear out these foods. These biosimilar proteins are critical because they will be churning down your immune response before you ever get to your primary allergen, whether that's a tree nut or peanut, whatever it may be. So by the time we actually start peanut, we're taking patients from no peanut to let's call it 24 peanuts in roughly 6 months. That's a very fast build for someone who's anaphylactic, but that's only done because we have conditioned the immune system accordingly based on data science. Ultimately, once you clear those foods, they're treated simultaneously. You then reach a point of remission where you consume these foods openly. Unlike OIT, where he has to consume just a small amount, and that's every single day, and you still have to avoid everything. Now you actually consume the foods openly like a non-allergic person. So if you're anaphylactic to peanuts, you're now consuming a Snickers bar, like without a problem. You're eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, things of that nature. So that is the model we have. We continue to track the data over time, and that's that's probably the shortest explanation I can give to you at this time.
Hi, again, thank you for having these. I have several very random questions. Okay, Beth, I appreciate all the information that you shared, and I think that's definitely a goal that we have for our 13-year-old is how do we, launch her into the world and allow her to just be kind of as full of a person as she can be with the, you know, choices and freedoms and things like that. So my real simple question, at college, does she have an EpiPen?
Yes, she
Okay.
still carries an EpiPen with her everywhere she goes. She has the twin pack. So
Yeah.
yes, she carries an EpiPen, and that is what the clinic has told us.
Sure.
And she knows that that is for the foreseeable future. And we
Yeah.
knew that going into the program that that wasn't an expectation that she wouldn't have to carry it anymore. I hope she
Okay.
never has to use it, but it
Yeah.
is an insurance policy for us still, where I feel confident that she will use it if she needs to, and she always still has it with her at all times. For
Right.
sure.
Or someone can help her use it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but that is a great question. And I do get that
Okay.
often with
Yeah.
potential patients too. And yes, she still uses it. She still carries it.
Here is it. Okay. Okay. So, okay. So my 13-year-old, she's kind of had a lot of different allergies throughout her life. We did go through a series of oral food challenges to find out specifically what tree nut she was allergic to. Some of her IG, so right now, the only things that she is definitely anaphylactic to is walnut, and then we assume peanut because of the same proteins or whatnot. Or pecan, not peanut, pecan. So those oral food challenges, she tolerates and eats all of those nuts. We enjoy them in all kinds of things. So is that like a baseline, like that does not need to be further looked at? Or is something that ends up getting incorporated into these 400 data points?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we're going to do an intake as part of that entire process as
Yeah.
well. If you're consuming certain nuts or certain seeds, absolutely. The key thing is you can consume those things, but what does your immune system think about that consumption? And that's the
Right, because
information
some
that
of
we
her
will.
IgEs are still high and would say allergic, but we're eating them regularly and she seems fine. But
Right.
maybe it's flaring her eczema every now and then or things like that. Okay, okay, so thank you. And then she
Sorry,
currently,
let me just add to that.
oh,
Remember, we will modify that dose for you. So we rarely, if ever, stop a food. If you're consuming it, we're never
Yeah.
going to tell you, oh, just totally stop it. But we can actually tell you how much of that food is going to get her immune system in the right place. And that's the beauty of data science.
thank you. Okay. So she currently has also like so she does allergy shots. She had a lot of environmental allergies, all the trees, all the grasses, a lot of dander, and not really able to sleep over at people's houses. Only with colds, or a couple times she's had asthma induced from exercise or with bad colds. Usually not ever any other time. Okay. So with allergy shots, a lot of that seems to be improving. But can you do TIP while you're also doing allergy shots, or do we need to finish allergy shots and then start TIP?
Yeah, if you're generally on once a month maintenance of shots, you can certainly, join TIP pretty easily. We just need you to be at the end of it, or, kind of what we call the monthly maintenance phase of shots.
Yeah, and we are. We may change up the dander, like we're still having some asthma issues with sleepovers with people that have pets or dogs. Okay. And then what is the lead time like to get started? So I'm thinking like summer's coming. It'd be a good time as our family to like learn a lot, make our family adjustments, get better organized, have the space to get kind of on board. But like, I mean, it's May, like from like decision that, hey, we want to consult to like when we would actually start, like help walk through the very beginning typical timeline.
Yeah, every parent is different. You can call and, again, there's an enrollment team here. We'll walk you through the steps. But as soon as you schedule your first appointment, the clock starts essentially. So you'll get a lot of intake information. We'll get all that data organized. You'll come in for the initial onboarding visit. There we will start the testing process. So tests are run, blood is drawn, and so forth. We usually have you come back in about 8 weeks. And in 8 weeks, you're doing your first sets of challenges and you're starting the program. After that, you're coming in about every 8 to 10 weeks, depending on your distance from, our main site here. And then the process goes from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate
you're welcome. Next, we have Alexandra. And maybe while you unmute, I do want to make a comment about the question about the EpiPen and remission. We recommend individuals carry it because we cannot control someone's ability to maintain all of the dosing that they're supposed to. I will tell you that we've done remission surveys, and it's interesting. Somewhere around only 1 out of 3 patients carries an EpiPen when they're in remission. That's not what we recommend, but it tells you that the level of confidence that these individuals have is pretty high. In fact, it's driving us now to study what deep remission looks like. And we believe that in a couple of years, we'll have some new testing built that'll probably give us a good sense of what patients go into deep remission, and then we'll no longer have to carry an EpiPen. So that's just a side note. Go ahead, Alexandra.
Hi, thank you for taking my question, and thank you so much for hosting this, and Beth for sharing your experience. We have a little guy at home. He's 14 months, so we're just kind of in the early stages of learning more about TIP, and his allergies are milk, egg, peanuts, tree nuts. And I guess my question is, you know, we're aware that some of these allergies many children grow out of in the early childhood years, specifically milk and egg. Is there something to be said, since he's so young right now, for giving this a year or two, seeing what he may or may not grow out of before starting this program, or is the sooner the better?
Yeah, there's you know, it's interesting. The data on what we call persistent allergy, right? That's what you're bringing up, which is, okay, you're 6 months old, you're a year old. What allergies are going to maintain themselves or be persistent when you're 10 or when you're 20 years old? Unfortunately, that data is very, very minimum. The studies that were done on this were done in the 90s. They were not done in large populations, and it becomes a difficult, you know, question in that sense. What we do know is that egg has the highest chance of achieving natural tolerance. I don't use the word outgrow, because outgrowing allergies is not exactly accurate. Remember that 2/3 of individuals have their first anaphylactic reaction after the age of 18. These are 2 foods that they previously consumed, so they grew into an allergy, if you want to use that, you know, similar comparison. So achieving natural tolerance is the question. Egg is the first one that can likely get there. Dairy is a little tough. Dairy numbers actually, based on more recent studies, show that the persistence can be much higher than previously thought. Tree nuts and peanuts generally tend to be persistent. Seeds tend to be very persistent, as are shellfish and fish. So, you know, ultimately what I tell individuals is, you know, come in, get your testing done, and we can give you a pretty good sense of what looks like it's going to be persistent versus what needs to be treated.
Okay. Yeah, we live in Pennsylvania. And my second question is, you know, while you're enrolled in the program and beyond, once graduated, do families sort of maintain a primary allergist? I imagine, you know, that's something that's important to maintain. I'd also find an allergist that is supportive of the choice to do TIP. We inquired to our local children's hospital, who, to be honest, weren't very willing to acknowledge the TIP program, which kind of blew my mind, because it seems to be very common knowledge, I think, in the allergy world, that this institute exists and is so revolutionary, but they were very much in denial of and not willing to discuss it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's I find that fascinating, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, we presented at the largest you know, allergy conference here a few months ago. And you know, I had the folks from CHOP, you know, walk up and talk to us as if they've never heard of us before. And obviously, you know, that just tells us that, you know, there's just much more, I guess, you know, information that we have to keep pushing out there, and that's something we're actively doing. But ultimately, you know, like we've stood the test of time. We have the largest number of patients, again, globally. And, you know, ultimately we work with any allergist who wants to work with us. It's really that simple. We have plenty of folks who can refer out to. We have a larger affiliate network of doctors now that we're growing, which includes many, many allergists. So I think we're kind of at that point where you know, that side of things is behind us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We probably have a few more questions we can only take at this time, so we'll ask Pardis.
Pardis, yes, thank you. We are in a 35 visit plan, so we are 2 years into the program. We're currently on visit 8 in June. If we move to Long Beach or somewhere, we're in Phoenix, so not far. But if we move to Long Beach and are local, would that shorten the program at all for us for the visits?
Yeah, most often local folks are coming in every 6 weeks. We can also kind of run tests a little bit more frequently. That was the original, original plan. When I first built this thing, I had no idea people were going to fly in to get treatment. So I built everything on about an 80-mile radius. And yeah, those patients would come in every 6 weeks, sometimes even a little bit less, but generally 6 weeks, and we would move it quite a bit faster. Thanks for the question. I think we have one more. Sylvia. Sylvia, I'm sorry.
No,
Thank you.
it's okay. Thank you for taking my question. I'm also speaking from you to you from Europe, Croatia. So I have actually 2 questions. My 13-year-old son has multiple allergies and EOE, and he actually has SIBO in remission. So MET and SIBO in remission. So my first question is, can patients with EOE undergo sleep therapy for our environmental allergens because of the esophagus? I think you understand.
Yes.
And the second question is, through the testing and the TIP program, is it possible to identify which foods may be triggers for EOE? So because we are quite sure about the milk, that the milk is a trigger, but about the others we are quite unsure. So if you can say a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good set of questions. Again, we have a large number of patients from Croatia as well. So EOE again is a complicated diagnosis. I'll give you the shortest answer possible. If you took 100 patients who have EOE, roughly half of them have EOE that's triggered by acid reflux, and so those patients, you can literally just treat the reflux and their EOE is gone. Of the remaining 50 individuals, only 5 of them have anaphylaxis to foods. So, what we are dealing with here are individuals who are anaphylactic to foods and they have EOE. So the other 45 individuals, they have different, triggers. Some of them are environmental, some of them can be non-allergic or non-anaphylactic foods, and so forth. But if you have anaphylaxis to food and you have EOE, you are in a unique group because that subgroup of individuals can be treated through TIP. And we have a great success rate in that. We're able to get their EOE under control. We're able to treat them. And then once they're in remission, their EOE gets better and better. Their numbers improve. Many of them, I'd say largely, and nearly all of them come off medication. And again, as the question that was asked earlier, it's all about the communication networks that exist between these particular food proteins and the communication of all these different immune cells. As far as SLIT as an environmental treatment and EOE, that is something we typically don't do if the EOE is active. So we're going to work on other biosimilar proteins first, sometimes around year 1 or year 1.5. We may go down the route of SLIT if it's deemed safe based on data. And the last question you asked was around, can we diagnose non-anaphylactic allergens as triggers? I would say we can definitely give you good guidance on that. We do not have large scale data on that because, again, that's not the large number of EOE patients that we're treating. We're treating anaphylactic patients. But we can definitely give you some guidance on if it's an atypical food. Generally, some of our testing will point us in that direction. Great. Well, I think we're at time. So again, I want to thank Beth Hischke and Maddie for sharing their story. That was really, really wonderful. We will do these every month. So I encourage you to come back if you have more questions. We have an enrollment team who can answer further questions as well. Please take advantage. And I'll leave you with one simple message, and that is, in the end, it's all about time. If you listen to Beth's story, it's about time. If you listen to your stories, you're all talking about time. You want to maximize the time your child has without having this medical condition. And whatever it takes to get there, that's what we're committed to. I encourage you to, again, dive into our program, learn about what a life of non-avoidance looks like. It's really quite amazing. And also learn about what we're doing that is all on the cutting edge. And we're not only the leaders on the therapeutic side, we're leaders on the diagnostic side, and we're the leaders on the remission side. And these are all very exciting things that I think should give everyone lots of hope. And with that, I will wish you all a very great day. Thanks.